says Rabbeinu Yonah. So we said yesterday that the only way a person will be able to start doing teshuvah for his sins is first he wants to do teshuvah. And we spoke at great length many reasons why a person should do teshuvah. Okay, now let's talk about actually doing teshuvah. What do we have to do teshuvah about? And what do you have to do teshuvah from? And therefore, the number one first thing he speaks about is the rabbinic mitzvot. Madrega Rishona, Chomer Divrei Sofrim. We have to learn about the severity of the mitzvot that were commanded by the word of the sages. And therefore, the Torah obligates us to accept the enactment of the prophets and the Torah authorities, to hear the words of the sages, and and to observe their safeguards. Right? As it says in the Torah, the Torah says, do not deviate from the word that they tell you left or right. Even if they tell you go left and you think it's right, and they tell you go right and you think it's left, nonetheless, you have to follow. Right? So really, if you think about it, every Darabanan should really be Doraita. So, but Hashem commanded us to treat the Darabanans in a different manner. They have different rules, like Sefek Darabanan Kula, and so on and so forth. But the fact that Hashem commanded us as well, Hashem commanded us to listen to the words of the Chachamim also. ויש דרכים וצדדים ימצאון שם דברי סופרים חמורים מדברי Torah. You're going to find many ways the words of the sages is actually more strict than the words of the Torah. As the sages say, chomer b'divrei sofrim b'divrei Torah. Actually, we see that there's great severity to the one who doesn't follow the words of the sages than the words of the Torah itself. From the fact we see Zaken Mamre. What's a Zaken Mamre? Zaken Mamre is an elder who's a great Torah scholar, part of Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin voted on certain matter that is related to a sin. That's a punishment. And he said it's mutar. They say it's asur. They voted and it's asur. And he says, I'm still going to go to my community and teach them it's mutar. So he's a rebellious elder. He's undermining the authority of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin made a law and he's saying, I'm going to teach otherwise. So therefore, with such a person, the Torah says, death penalty for his defiance. But we don't see such a thing by the Torah, that if a person doesn't heed the Torah's laws, you get death penalty. Not necessarily. But here, any matter that the sages convene and decide in the Sanhedrin, if he goes against, that's it. But that's right. Sha'omer en tefillin lavor al divrei Torah patur. An elder who says in the Torah there's no tefillin at all, leading people to transgress the law of the Torah, is exempt from death penalty. Or let's say someone who says there's 5 compartments to be in the tefillin to be worn in the head, adding to the words of the sages, such a sage who says that is liable to death penalty. So you see, the kol over divrei chachayim hayamita, as the Gemara Masechet Brachot says, whoever transgresses the words of the sages is liable to death at the hands of heaven. Okay, and the Rabbeinu Yonah explains this is someone who does it with a disparaging attitude, right? He says, come on, the rabbis, leave me alone. But the Torah said this, why the rabbis have to make things complicated? Enough, leave it alone. He doesn't accept and disrespect their expounding of the verse and explanation of the Torah. Now we should know. Why is it so? Why did Hashem make it that the words of the sages are more strict than the Torah? Hashem's word should be the ultimate word. It should be that Hashem's word is the death penalty and the sages should be lower. Why is it the sages worse? Why is the sages more severe? This is the explanation. Whoever has the audacity to violate the words of the sages, he thinks their commandments are trivial, are not so important, right? And not because his Yitzhahara, right? Rather, it's because his eyes are too weak to see the light, meaning he disrespects the word. Someone who doesn't keep the Torah, why does he not keep the Torah? Usually it's because he has desires. But a guy who doesn't keep the Chachamim's words, it's not because he has desires, it's because he doesn't value their word. He doesn't see the meaning in their explanation. So therefore, it's more of a disparaging attitude. So that disparaging attitude is what causes the death penalty. It's not because he transgressed it. It's because of the attitude which you transgressed it. That's why it's so severe. Kol over divrei chachamim. V'lo mashach be'ol gizratam. He doesn't feel bound by the authority of their decrees. Everybody feels bound to the authority of the Torah, and he only transgresses it because of the Yitzhara. So therefore, Al-Ken, Mishpat, Mavid, Yelaish. For this reason, the sentence of death in the hands of heaven is fitting for the person who violates command of the sages, because he discarded one of their worthy statements, and he's a person who's called Beliol. He's considered a person without a yoke of heaven. It's like a person who went off the derech. When you say like this, it shows like you're going off the derech. A person who, I know the Torah is true, okay, I fell in my desires. That's completely different. That's on a lower level. A person who throws off the yoke, that's a much, much more severe sin, demanding death by heaven. This person has to be careful. Okay. Shenit, ki האיש ההוא רחוק מן התשובה, אחרי אשר אין דבר חמור עליו, גם ישנה באיוולתו תמיד. Another problem of violating rabbinic laws is the person who writes off the rabbi's laws, and he says, I don't believe in that. He's going to do it all the time. Now he's going to transgress it every time. A person who keeps the Torah and he falls because of his desires, maybe next time he'll fight his desires and he'll keep it. But the guy who acts with this disdain to the words of the sages, he'll always do it again and again. It says in Shir Shirim, right? Your words are better than wine. Your love is better than wine. It says Am Yisrael to Hashem. And therefore, what does that mean? It refers to Chavivin Divrei Sofrim, right? Dodecha is the words of the Sofrim. Miyayin Yaina Shel Torah. The words of the sages, the Am Yisrael says, are dearer than the wine of the Torah itself, right? And why is that? You should know the fear of heaven is the foundation of all mitzvot, right? And what is it called? What does Hashem ask of you? Just to fear Him, right? The whole Torah, basically, you sum it up, it's listening to Hashem's words. And now what do? And now not just do you show you who listen to Hashem, you even listen to Hashem's servants, right? You listen to what they say. And not just do you not want to transgress the Torah, you even follow their safeguards, so you shouldn't even transgress their safeguards, and surely you won't come to break the Torah's laws. It's like a person who's a field owner and he erects a fence around his own fence. Because I don't want even my fence to be breached, so I make another fence around my fence to show how much I love my field and I care about the field. So therefore, the sages made safeguards, and therefore, when you keep the words of the sages, the safeguards, should show how much more love you have for Hashem also. So that's why the sages tell us that the Chachamim, they actually give us zechut, because it says in the Torah, the Gemara asks Masechet Brachot, lo takir panim. Right? It says in the Torah you cannot take bribes, you cannot show favoritism, and it says the angels ask Hashem that. But it says in the Torah, you're going to give chen to the Jewish people. You have favoritism of the Jewish people. Angel said, "What's up with that? You have to keep your own Torah." Hashem it says, "Lo tisa panim, lo takir panim." Right? So Hashem's answer, the Masechet Brachot says, Hashem answer, what should I do? It says in the Torah, you eat, you get full, you bless, and say Birkat Hamazon. The Jewish people, they already eat kazait, they already make Birkat Hamazon. They machmir on themselves. And kazait is the idea of making Birkat Hamazon after kazait is the Rabbanan. So keeping the words of the sages enables us to get favoritism from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what he answered to the angels. So you see that's what the Gemara says. The pasuk in Shir Shirim, Ki tovim dodecha miyayin, that the Jewish people love the words of the sages more than the wine of Torah, because it gives us more brachot. It gives us a favoritism from Hashem. It gives us more benefits. So therefore, we love to keep even the words of the sages. How much more so we love to keep the Torah? But out of love for the Torah, we keep what the words of the sages are. רוב הזהירות והגדר והרחקות מן האיסור, הלא זה מעיקרי המורה. ומרבה להיזהר יגיע אל השכר הגדול. And the more caution you have with towards prohibitions, that shows fear of heaven, and whoever is vigilant about this achieves great reward. As it says, Gam avdecha nizar bahem beshamram ekev rav. Your servant is cautious with the mitzvot, guards them, there is great reward. Okay, good. So therefore, that's why a person has to be careful with the words of the sages. Okay. So now he says, for example, he says you have to be careful. A lot of people are not disparaged and they think, you could eat bread without nitlat yadayim. It's okay, right? Or people complain sometimes about how come the halls don't have proper sinks for to wash hand nitlat yadayim. So. Right, so they say, it's not comfortable. There's no way to wash. Okay, so just let's go let's go sit and eat. Restaurants, they all have try to make a sink to wash hands. But like wedding halls, sometimes wedding halls, they have a lot of people. They have a sit to eat. Yeah, the pitchers with the bucket. How come they don't have a real sink? Okay, but the point is that people, they just want to eat. When it comes to food, they're like a little bit excusing themselves. They want to sit and eat right away, not go wash hands, come back, dry your hands, say a bracha, all that stuff. They're mezalza, they disparage it. Even worse, they don't say brachot the drabanan, and even worse, they don't even say birkat hamazon, just the oraita, right? And there's many examples like this where the people blatantly violate the words of the sages. It says the person has to be careful not to fall into this type of group of people, right? And the famous story, Erovin, right? Erovin, Rabbi Kiva was in jail. His student used to bring him water every day, and he saw that he spilled out. The guard saw that day. He got angry at Rabbi Kiva. He spilled out half the water, and then Rabbi Kiva used the water for Nitlat Yadayim. So he asked the Rabbi, usually you have enough water for Nitlat Yadayim and to drink. Now you use it for Nitlat Yadayim. You have nothing to drink. And he says, it's okay. He says, better I should die safek than I should die vadai. He says, because if I don't do Nitlat Yadayim, for sure I'll die. Whoever goes where the sages dies. But if I don't drink, maybe I'll survive, maybe I won't. So I'll take the maybe, and I won't take the vadai. Baruch